Hello everyone, welcome back once again. Okay, today we will discuss English with the transposition to the Catalan. Right. Last time we discussed the symmetrical English with C4, C5. This time the structure with C4, E6. All right, C4, C6. It will still be the same approach. Catalan setup. Okay, the model game for today is a game by Wesley against Kramnik back in 2017. So g3, d5, bishop into g2, knight f6, knight f3, bishop e7, castles, and then d4. Okay, let me also show you if the opponent, let's say, controls the d4 square with the pawn push. It can transpose into, let's say, castles, bishop into e7, we go e3, c5 takes, we have knight a3. Some sort of a reverse Benoni, yeah, if the opponent goes for d4. It can continue with a move like, okay, let's say castles here. We go d3, we have knight into c6 and rook e1. Let's say here, okay, maybe bishop d6 to control the e5 square, for example. Then we can go rook to b1, threatening b4. If the opponent plays a5, we go knight into b5. The bishop will probably go back to b8, again controlling the e5 square. Then we go bishop g5, h6, takes, and c5 will do. Yeah, c5, e5, knight into d2, control of two squares. Knight c4, knight d6 is coming as well. If queen goes to e7, we have knight e4 and knight d6. Okay, big chances for both sides, but I like white in this kind of position again, with that pretty venomous bishop on g2. All right, so in this case, bishop e7 was played in this game. Castles d4. Okay, now we have the Catalan setup. Take c4. Black could also go for a solid setup with c6. Then we go b3 here. But we'll reserve this for another discussion next time. Okay, so d4 captures, queen c2, a6, a4 to stop b5. Bishop into d7, queen takes c4, bishop into c6, bishop f4. All right. Bishop f4 was played by Wesley back in the day. An interesting game played about, was it a month, 2 months ago in the World Cup between Abbasov and Caruana. Abbasov went for bishop g5, which is also interesting. It went on with the move, okay, sorry, knight bd7, all right, and then knight c3, h6, bishop f4, bishop d6. Abbasov allowed the capture on f4 to open up the g file, takes, king h1, using the g file to attack the Caruana's king with rook to g1, control of the middle with e4, queen e7, rook to g3, e5, rook ag1, rook g8, queen e3. We have the bishop on e4. Caruana blundered with queen b4. He needs to go for f5 in that game. Yeah. The main point is that after takes on f6, knight takes f6. Okay, white's pawn structure here is a bit worse, of course, compared to black. Although white could play here bishop f5. Maybe he was worried about this. And then rook de8, probably bishop g6. Maybe he was thinking like, oh, maybe it's a draw. Yep. He played queen b4 and missed this amazing tactics with f5. Okay, if we continue, for example, takes on f5, there is knight f6, because if you take on f6, white has queen h6 and rook h3, mate. Okay, Abasov went to win this game, and he also booked his spot in the candidates right away. So looking back, okay, bishop f4, played by Wes. a5 to stop any b4 expansion on the queen side by white. the same time also controlling the b4 square. So knight c3, knight bd7, it's black on b4. White needs to push that pawn on e4. Queen to d3, bishop b4, Kramnik doesn't allow it. Rook to rook to e1, same thing. Rook e8 was played. Okay, Wesley still couldn't play e4 because of the take on c3. Okay, let me illustrate. If e4 takes on c3, takes on c3, there's bishop takes e4. Because if you play rook takes e4, for example, there is knight c5. There's a pin on your queen, and your rook is dead. You gotta be careful with that trick. Let's move that pawn. So with that, Wesley had to play queen c2 to avoid that pin on the d3 queen. Then you can push e4. So Kramnik captured the knight. Okay, if he wants to continue, he could also go for bishop takes c3 here. Takes on c3. h6, and an important move here is bishop f1, not allowing the exchange of the light square bishop if you're consistent with your e4 push. Then rook d1 first, knight d2, then knight c4, then f3 e4 later on. And white should be better, slightly better. So Kramnik went for takes on f3. He doesn't like his bishop on c6, so this one's put c6. Rook d1, queen into e7, knight a2, attacking the bishop. Bishop d6, takes, knight c1. Okay, nice. Since it's not so good to have it on c3, Wesley reroutes the knight on c1, try to go for b3, a5 is a target, c5 squares also. So knight into d5, e4, finally we reach it. Queen c3, an important square for the queen, keeping an eye on this two squares, e5 and c5. At the same time, this pawn also on a5. So e5, knight b3, that was the point of rerouting the knight from a2 to c1. Queen e7, bishop g2, takes on d4, rook takes d4. Knight f8, rook ad1, centralizing the rooks. Rook d8, rook 1 d2. It was also possible for Wesley to go for e5 here. Yeah. So if Kramnik, let's say, goes for knight e6, and we have rook d6. You have that hook, yeah, the pawn hook to the d6 square. But Wesley was waiting. Rook on d2. He waited for knight to move before taking. He wants that exchange because he wants to take that pawn, and the queen protects. That was clever, very clever, anticipating that the pawn will play rook d8. Knight a8 because he wants that d6 square. Visualization. Yeah. Knight into d6, nice coordination. Target will be that pawn on g7 with knight f5. Swinging the knight to f5. That makes the queen on c3 strong as well. And the threat is b3, queen takes b4. So rook a1 is forced, bishop f1 at a6. King g2, moving out of the pin on g1. Knight into c7, knight f5, finally. Queen e8, bishop c4. Trying to remove the defender with extra rook there and potential checkmate on g7. So rook a, rook d6, that's it. So sense of danger, Kramnik had to protect g7 because any other move, like if let's just say you go b5, we have bishop takes, and rook takes. Yes, we're gonna go for mate there. So queen into f8, rook to d7. Queen e5, attacking the knight twice on c7. b5, bishop a2, another good move. Some people would say bishop b3 is enough for me, but wrong. Yeah, because there's something like knight c5 here. Attacking the bishop, it's much better to go a2. So g6, knight into e3, repositioning the knight, g4, look at the dark square weakness here. So rook e7, exchange, take, queen g5, knight f6, simplified version. Although, in this position right here, Wesley could have gone on for rook takes f7. Because the queen, of course, cannot take on f7. There's knight h6, yes? And if you go king, sorry, let's take a look at that one. King takes. There's a pin on the bishop to the king. If the king moves g8, then it's just go knight d4. You're losing a piece, and plus a strong attack on the king. And if you go king f6, you can simply take the pawn on c6, because the king cannot take this peony on f5. You have bishop takes e6 and a skewer on the queen on f8. With a little bit of calculation, I think Wesley could have won the game early. But he had in mind a simplified win. Simple win, beautiful win, it's the same result. At least with a simple win, you don't allow the opponent to have any counterplay or any annoyance. So knight g4, win g5, knight f6. Right. And Wesley was some machine-like precision in the end game here. You don't give Wesley this type of positions. That's like Magnus as well. So f4, c4, king f2, the extra pawn plus the combination. I definitely like. I believe also that knight and bishop is superior than two knights. Basically with that principle that the bishop and knight can do checkmate, but two knights cannot. Okay, so king g7, king into e3, knight b3, g4. The rest is just a matter of technique. b3, of course, takes. Nothing much to cover here. But then again, Wesley played flawless technique in the endgame here. Knight into a6, centralized king. b3 is covered. Okay, king into e5. All right, nice move. Covering these two squares. b4 and then knight d4, covering b3 once again, not allowing any counter for Kramnik takes, maintaining the connection of the two pawns. King into d6, no checks for the knights. e5, all right, knight e6, bring the pawn. And being careful also in the last move with bishop a4. Some players would go for like, oh, it's the same, I go f7, yeah, but we have to be careful because knight d7 comes into play. If you take on d7, there's knight takes e5, yeah. Although, if you know how to checkmate with bishop and knight, it will be easier. That's what I was telling you earlier, that a bishop and knight combination is superior than two knights. Because once the opponent sacrifices the two knights for the pawns, and you are left with bishop and knight, you can go for checkmate. Unlike when you have two knights, and if the bishop and knight sacrifice for your pawns, you don't have any checkmate for two knights. Right? But Wesley played bishop a4. Careful and an easy way to win. Covering the d7 square. Oh, what a game by Wesley. Very clean. Smooth game against the former world champion Kramnik back in the day. It was 6 years ago, by 2017. And also our main theme here is the English when it's transposed to the Catalan. So you have to be ready also with the transposition, right, to a different line, which is the Catalan. And once you have that knowledge, it's easier to play, of course. You know this middle game transpositions, middle game positions, and eventually you go into an end game where you also know where to drive your opponent. Yeah. So that's it for today. That was Catalan, English, transposed to the Catalan, and in the next episode, we'll go probably for the Slav, c4 and c6. This one, c4, e6. That's it for now. This is Coach Oliver once again. Stay safe, everyone, and have a good day. Bye-bye.